Hi everybody, today I want to talk about modular housing because it was been a buzzword for a number of years, but this year things have gone a bit awry. Modular housing first came into prominence in the UK in 1920 and 1930, would you believe, and of course they were called prefabrications. I'm sure that the modular builders of today will be insulted if I call them prefabs, but that's what they were originally from 1920, 1930s. And a lot of the housing actually is built during the war because that they needed to have construction quickly. A lot of it was prefab, and that's where the modular of today comes from. So the UK build about 3,000 modular homes a year. About 1 in 60 of all homes built are modular, and that's just a tiny amount when you think about it. And that's one of the problems that the modular industry has. So this year alone, 3 major factories have gone to the wall, they've gone bankrupt. And the reason for that is they're just not managing to produce enough modular homes because they haven't got the order book. So if you're only building 3,000 a year in the UK, it's just not enough to get the costs down and be more competitive. So modular homes are always more money to build than traditional homes. They are at the moment anyway. And until you can get the capacity up in these factories, then it's always going to be a problem. I went to a meeting with the housing minister along with about 30 other people. It was Kit Malthouse at the time, one of our better housing ministers. We've had 13 in 10 years or something, a few years ago. And the government were really pushing modular because they could see that these houses can be built much quicker if they're modular than they can if they're traditional. But of course, it comes with a number of challenges. One is that they're too expensive, which we've mentioned. Another one is they don't have the flexibility of design that some local authorities will want and architects will want. So you've got a choice of 5 different designs and that's it. It's a bit like buying a car. So that doesn't really work in the UK. So that's a major problem. The other problem they have is everything is manufactured off-site in a factory. So from a funding point of view, it's a big problem. So, you know, who is going to have the confidence to pay a lot of money to a factory for a building that then gets put on a lorry and could end up anywhere? And most banks are very nervous about that. The government have come up with a scheme to underwrite that problem with Homes England, the government property bank, as it were. So there are different ways you can do that and get it funded, but it isn't easy. It really isn't easy. The other issue is, of course, 10-year warranties. You know, can you get the 10-year warranties on these buildings? And of course, the answer is yes, you can, as long as they've been tested correctly and they have what's called a 65-year life is what the Building Research Establishment, which is the government body, tests these buildings, as well as traditional buildings, by the way, and they give them a lifespan, and the lifespan is 65 years, and that's acceptable. So in terms of getting 10-year warranties, there are a number of warranty companies now that will do them, as long as they adhere to all the UK building regulations. So if you're buying one of these modular homes from Poland or somewhere like that, check that it's got its UK specification, building regulation wise. If they're built in the UK, I'm sure there isn't any problem. Now, builders of modular homes tell you, or told me, that they're worth 15% more than a similar house built traditionally because of the savings that are made in terms of the energy savings and their green credibility. Now, I don't know any surveyor yet that has valued one of these modular homes at more than a traditional house, and I would be very sceptical, and I am very sceptical, that any valuer will do so. So if they're saying to you, the manufacturer, oh well, you get 15% more than you would for a traditional house, I don't see that happening in the market at the moment, especially at the market at the moment. And I don't see many surveyors and valuers who are brave enough to stick their neck on the line. They're not the bravest, as we know, and say, oh, it's worth 15% more because it's cheaper to run and all the rest of it. So I think that's a bit of killology at the moment. Killology, I should say, at the moment. So I'll be very wary of that. My personal view is that until the top 10 house builders in the UK, that, remember, they build 70% of the new homes in the UK, until they get on board and decide to use modular and to sell houses which are modular in a large quantity, then the modular market in the UK will stay very small and very bespoke. See you next time.